Hi everyone, Naka here, making the invisible visible as always. And I want to thank all of my new subscribers for joining my community. Welcome. We are going to be having some conversations that you may not have on other channels, and thank you for taking this journey with me. So I want to first of all start by saying that the title is real. I do feel as though there are a lot of black women who have a fear and an inherent fear of being average, basic, and regular. There's a dialogue in the modern culture that, to be basic and to be average and to be regular is a bad thing. And so I want to kind of talk about this, and I want to start with a question. Do you all think that if you are not regular, if you are not basic, if you're not average, does that mean that in some ways you are closer to the white aesthetic? So again, if you are in the pursuit of not being average or not being regular, does that mean that you're in the pursuit in some way of some kind of white aesthetic? And let me kind of break down what I mean here. So I'll use an example from my own life. So well, first of all, I want to start by saying I can't tell you how many times I've heard a black man say that he doesn't like fake lashes. He doesn't like long, super long fake nails. He doesn't like weaves. He doesn't like wigs. Black men repeatedly over and over say that, and yet it doesn't faze us as women. We still do it. Now, I am all about us doing things for us, not doing it to appease a gaze, as I've talked about in other videos. However, I also know many of us do these things because we think men like it. And again, like I said, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from men themselves that they don't like it. They prefer minimal makeup, like less is more. You know what I'm saying? So with that being the case, and kind of knowing that in general most men seem to prefer a more natural look, what is this whole thing about, again, not being average or not wanting to be average or basic or regular? So I'm going to start with my own life and some of my experiences. So as you can see, I have locks now. I haven't always had locks. There was a time that I wore weaves. There's a time that I wore wigs, and I'm going to make a whole video about that. But I do remember distinctly having never really had like a TWA afro, but I had a fro at a time. And I always remember when I would go out, if I was with another woman who had weave and it was long and it was straight and it was, a texture that was considered maybe like a biracial texture. So whether it be curly, like a wave, like a looser wave, and like I said, it's long, or even if it's straight, I always remember not only feeling a little insecure, not because I thought anything was wrong with my afro, but because I knew I probably wouldn't get much attention. And I think that is something that black women are constantly faced with, is this reality that if you show up and you look too quote unquote black and regular, and just average, like if you look like an average black woman and you show up looking like that, oftentimes you might wonder if you are going to be received as attractive. Why is this important? Why am I bringing this up? Well, of course, my channel is here to expose and make things visible for black women. And, if so many women are putting on false lashes and piling on makeup, wearing the fake nails, getting the weaves, the wigs, the fajas and the waist trainers and whatever these things are that we're doing, right? That many of us on some level participate in. If we're all doing this, isn't that basic? Isn't that regular? Isn't that average? Like, wouldn't it be not average or not basic or not regular to be the one who kind of stands out, who either doesn't participate in a lot of those things or does it at a minimal level? I mean, in some ways, when you see a woman who is very made up, again, like she said, the whole nine, the lashes, the veneers, the everything, and even down into the surgeries, for the attempt to not be average, right? So maybe she's doing this to not be basic, but then essentially when you go out, if you see a lot of women who look like that, which now we do, like that's just pretty much standard. As a woman, if you don't have some kind of overlay, even if it's not fake nails, because let's not try to play word games, okay? Even if it's whether it's an overlay on your nail or it's gel, whatever it is, the bottom line is, if it's not your natural nails with polish on it, most women have that. Most women have the fake lashes, even if it's the individual ones. You know, many of us have weaves and wigs. All of these things are actually average. All of these things are actually typical. So what does it then mean to be average if all of us have these things? And I'm going to link a video in the description by Rebecca Lynn Pope, who did an amazing video on YouTube about this dynamic that we're essentially all starting to look the same. And this even goes down into the video that I did, the BBL epidemic video, even our bodies, you know, even us all going out to achieve the same shapes. And again, I think in many ways it's the pursuit to be, to stand out, the pursuit to be exceptional, the pursuit to be attractive and to rank, quote unquote, rank high on whatever scale it might be. But again, if so many women are doing that, in my opinion, at some point it actually does become average, basic, and extremely regular. I want to tie in to this conversation plus size women, because in my BBL epidemic video, I didn't really hone in on this, but there is a phenomenon, there is something happening right now in the plus size community where there's a lot of plus size women, and I define plus size as, you know, size 12 and over. A lot of plus size women who are not necessarily getting BBL surgeries, but they are getting, you know, like tummy tucks and liposuction, right? And what it's doing is it's allowing them to, again, sort of ward off this idea of being an average plus size woman. You know, so if you are an average plus size woman, which I kind of identify as, you know, you have a curvier body type. However, you know, you have a kind of a more natural body type. But there are now a lot of plus size women who are getting these surgeries to really snatch in their waist so that they have a quote unquote outstanding, you know, or I want to say exceptional body type that really stands out. And so then they can say that they haven't had a BBL because they have not. However, they've done things to their waist and their stomach that then accentuates their hips and their butt, and therefore they don't need a BBL. And so again, this is another attempt, in my opinion, to not be average, to not be basic, to not be regular. So again, I have questions. I mean, I don't have all the answers here. And so my question is, to pursue not being regular, do you have to move further away from the Black aesthetic to pursue that? It's a question. Again, not a judgment, but a question. Another thing I want to highlight, and one of my viewers mentioned this in the comment section, which is the self-esteem of Black women being, there were apparently studies done in the 90s about Black women and self-esteem. And I have to look this up, but I have heard this before, that there were studies that at one point Black women had like the highest self-esteem based on whatever studies were done. And I don't know if that's still the case anymore. And why I'm saying that is because, you know, one of the things I look at is hair. And again, like I said, I admit to having worn weaves and wigs, and quite frankly, I'm not against women who wear weaves and wigs. In fact, there's a lot of reasons why people do. But one of the things I do find interesting is that when you look at other cultures, you know, other cultures and races of women who wear, because Black women are not the only women or group of women that wear weaves and wigs, right? Like, we know this. White women are always wearing weaves and wigs. But the thing is, why is it that when we do it, when Black women wear weaves and wigs, the texture does not resemble our own? Why is that? Like, do you ever see a white woman with an afro? Do you ever see an Asian woman walking around with, you know, like 4C hair? Like, you don't see that, right? You don't see her going and getting a wig that looks like a Black woman, but you do see Black women going and getting weaves and wigs that look like white women's hair, that looks like Asian women's hair, that looks like every other race but their own. And why is that? So again, and I'm not, you know, some of this stuff is I'm not sitting here as an expert, but it's more asking questions, posing questions to you, getting you to think about it, and feel free to comment as to why you think this is the case. So going back to self-esteem, going back to the 90s, also going back to songs like Around the Way Girl by LL Cool J. So if you don't know that song, if you're not familiar, feel free to look it up. LL Cool J, I believe it was in the 90s, wrote a song, and the hook went, I need an around the way girl. And the entire song essentially describes an average black woman, definitely a woman who is powerful and strong in her own right and beautiful in her own right, but definitely like an around the way average black woman. And it's just so funny that I wonder how if that song was produced today, how it would be received, because I feel like we are attempting to move away from that. Like now it's all about like luxury and like high end this and high end that. And again, nothing is wrong with that. But whatever happened to the average, everyday, around the way black woman? Where is she? And the truth is that most of us are average until we kind of, doctor ourselves up a little bit. So even if you look at many celebrities who you see without makeup, like let's just use Beyonce as an example. Many of us have seen her without makeup. Beyonce is attractive with or without makeup. However, without makeup, without the blonde lace front wig, without all of that, Beyonce looks like just a regular person to me. Okay? So I think the reality is that the truth is that we're all on some level basic and average, and it doesn't mean we're not beautiful, right? I'm not saying that. I think we all have our own natural beauty, but I think this sort of attempt to move away from being regular and basic seems a little bit unnecessary. And don't you think it's a little odd that people pay for lip fillers and suntans and things that you likely have naturally, right? Just let that sink in for a second. People are out here paying good money for lip fillers and suntans and lots of different things that you just wake up and you just look like that. Like you literally just woke up like this. So let that sink in. So as black women, as we're pursuing all of these different ideals and trying to achieve these different aesthetic looks, let's just remember that there are women who are out there working hard to get the money to pay for the qualities that we naturally have. And sometimes I think that we forget that. And another important point I want to bring up is this desire that some women have to attain a body that actually is equivalent to the body that a little girl would have. And so let me explain what I mean. So oftentimes, women of a certain age, once you reach 40, that is typically the age that women start to consider various surgeries such as mommy makeovers, breast lifts, tummy tucks, and so forth. And again, and I'm not against any of these surgeries. But the point is, isn't it kind of interesting that as women, like oftentimes our ideal body is the body that typically an 18-year-old or maybe even a 15-year-old girl would have. And the question is, why are we desiring that body? Like, I know why, because youth matters, right? And we talk about how beauty and youth and all those things are like social capital. But the truth is that our bodies age and we age, and we should be confident and comfortable in that. And I just think that's interesting, is like most of the surgeries out there that exist for women, it's essentially an attempt to snap us back into the way we looked prior to being 18. And it's just really unrealistic, because if you are a grown woman, if you're 40 years old plus, if you're 30 plus, 35, especially if you've had children, the reality is that your body's just gonna change, and that's completely normal and okay. And I think that in many ways, there needs to be more of an attempt to embrace that reality as opposed to run from that reality. So I'm an author, a second-time author, and my latest book is called My Own Gaze, and here it is right here, My Own Gaze. You can go to the description box to find the link to Amazon as well as to my website where you can purchase the book. But I talk about my own contemplation of surgery and things like that, and I have not done anything to myself, but just my contemplation and just the pressure that I face, or that women in general face around that. However, and so one thing to just consider is that, sometimes fixing one thing, or so to speak, fixing or altering one thing on your body can then open the door to you wanting to alter more things. And so, for example, if you are getting a boob lift, or let's just say you're getting a tummy tuck, and now your tummy is snatched and looking like it did when you were 16, but then you might want your boobs to match, or maybe you want some other things to match. So then you're like, okay, well then I got to fix this, I got to fix that. So I think that's sometimes what can happen. So just, be mindful of that if this is the path that you're choosing to go down. And so women are really trying to curate the kind of perfect bodies that they believe that they should have. But the reality is that their perfection does not exist. And, there's women who want hips, but then they don't want the stretch marks, or they want the curves, but then they don't want the excess fat that typically comes with having a curvier body type. Some women want large breasts, but then they don't want them to sag. So again, it's like, you want to create this perfect body. And we all know that perfection is just not reality. And so again, this attempt to not be basic, not be regular, not be average, in my opinion, is not realistic. And I think a lot of Black women are fearful of, like the worst thing you could call a Black woman is regular and average and basic. And I disagree, and I think that, I'm kind of curious what you all think, actually. So feel free to leave your comments and let me know what you think. Like this video, subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and also let me know if there are topics that you want to see, videos that you would like me to make. Go ahead and drop that in the comments as well.